Fair use.
Open up you my lips, and let my mouth show forth your praise. Huma, Yahweh, Weaputsu Yeveka, Mianusa Misaneka Mitaneka. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Shalom, family, and thank you. Welcome to Into All Truth. I pray that the Ruach HaKodesh will lead you into all truth and show you things to come and transform you by the renewing of your heart so you may know what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of Yahuwah in these end times, knowing that the Spirit of Yahuwah goes before you and guides you and leads you into all truth, the angel of Yahuwah. Thank you so much for your donations. They help me so much. Please pick up Moed Into All Truth calendar to help you keep the appointed times, or Chaya Eat, Life, and Fast to help you fast and eat according to Torah. So today we're going to discuss a very dark subject, the whole Balenciaga affair and human trafficking and the dark star, the black sun that is rising. Now, it's always important to remember Yahuwah is the light, and my Yahusha, my Savior, whom shall I fear? He's the defender of my life, so of whom shall we be afraid? When evildoers draw nigh against me to eat up my flesh, my persecutors and my enemies, they fainted and fell. You see, the pursuers of Israel always ate them and cannibalized them. But though an army set itself in array against me, my heart shall not be afraid. Though war should rise up against me, in this I am confident. One thing have I asked of Yahuwah, and do I seek after, and that's to dwell in the house of Yahuwah all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of Yahuwah and inquire in his temple. For in the day of evil he shall hide me and set me upon a rock. Yes, in the secret of his tabernacle he shall hide me. He shall hide me and lift me up and set me upon a rock. Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Elohim of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. According to 2 Ezra 15, a star of wrath is going to be poured out in these particular end times. All right? And it's going to be poured out as a weapon. That great and mighty cause shall be puffed up and full of wrath, and the star, and that they will make all the earth afraid, and them that dwell therein, and they shall pour out on every high and eminent place a horrible star, fire, hail, flying swords, and many waters, and all the fields shall be full, and all the rivers with the abundance of great waters, and they shall go steadfastly unto Babylon and make her afraid, and they shall come to her and besiege her, and the star and all wrath they shall pour upon her, and then shall dust and smoke go up to heaven, and all they that be about her shall bewail her. So did that already happen once? And is it going to happen again? Did Esau Edom take on the form of the dragon and the fiery sword to defeat Israel. Is that the star of wrath? Coincidentally, the sun will also turn black and the moon to blood. CERN has opened up portals to allow other realms and beings in, and there is a massive pedo dump or reveal of pedophiles going on. So these are just my ideas. This is my speculation on the idea that according to 2nd Esdras, the star of wrath might possibly be this sun that the Chinese are creating. And, perhaps this type of a sun has existed before or currently exists somewhere else. So we're going to get into all of that. This is going to be one of my long videos. And so, like I said, I may just do these about once a month. Look forward to these once a month and make sure that you share them. Please make sure that you share them on your own pages and like. We're going to look at the star of wrath that is going to be poured out in the actual end of the world and how that ties into this exposure of all of these pedophiles and the unleashing of the giants, the spirits from the other realm through CERN. I'm going to take a very historical perspective on this so that we can track the history of, the wrath of Yah or whatever weapons that he used through his wrath, or the fallen angels or human beings, and the history of the fallen angels and their connection to human trafficking and creating their own particular time. So we're going to go throughout time to look at the wrath and look at the various gods and goddesses who are now masquerading as royals and movie stars today. So let's get into it. Remember, Israel, as we go through all of this, though you have endured this, this is not for you. Every man is brutish in his knowledge. Every founder is confounded by the graven image. For his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are vanity and the work of errors. In the time of their visitation they shall perish. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. Pour out thy fury upon the heathen that know thee not, and upon the families that call not unto thy name. For they have eaten up Jacob and devoured him and consumed him, and have made his habitation desolate. Babylon shall bring forth monsters. Jeremiah 15:1 says that Babylon will be captured, and Bel shall be put to shame. Marduk filled with terror, and her images shall be put to shame. Her idols shall be filled with terror. So these are the celebrities and royals who are so demon-possessed. The spirits of the giants in Enoch, it says, shall be like the clouds which shall oppress, corrupt, fall, contend, and bruise upon the earth. They shall be concealed and not rise against the sons of men, for they come forth during the days of slaughter and destruction.
There's a TV show called Stranger Things that has basically is outlining for you what's been done to the children. Those things are true. There are survivors that have supernatural abilities. There's survivors that can do things like you see on TV, like you see in the movies. That's MK Ultra.
"7,000 pedophiles were released in California this year. Meanwhile, the creative director of Balenciaga, Demna, is the ambassador of President Zelensky's fundraising platform, United 24, sounds like United Nations, over in the Ukraine. Balenciaga is owned by Francois Pinault, who also owns Kering, which is Gucci, Balenciaga, and Christie's. Who sponsored these artists? Are the Chapman brothers promoting pedophilia, or are they warning about something that is about to happen, or is it a combination of both? Now this somehow is also all tied to ectolife, a Borg or Matrix-like baby breeding technology. So how are these all related? Are they related? Let's get into it.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment, and that was wrong. So today, on behalf of another generation of American leaders and another generation of American citizens, the United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments, to their families, and to their communities. When the government does wrong, we have a moral responsibility to admit it. The duty we owe to one another to tell the truth and to protect our fellow citizens from excesses like these is one we can never walk away from.
A number of images and videos of what looks like a ball of light and gas went viral, with users claiming China had actually launched its recent experiment into the sky. One video, which has been retweeted over 20,000 times, pictures a bright light ascending into the air followed by billows of smoke, with a crowd of onlookers on the beach avidly capturing the moment on their phones. The posts have since been debunked, as they reportedly picture the launch of a Chinese rocket a few weeks prior. China's actual experiment, which remains firmly on the ground at a nuclear fusion facility in Shanghai, is designed to hopefully one day create unlimited clean energy. The machine managed to reach temperatures of up to 70 million degrees Celsius. That means China's East machine can burn almost 5 times hotter than the thing that is literally keeping everyone on Earth alive.
Pollution is among the biggest challenges that China faces, and to counter that, it has commissioned its super powerful nuclear fusion reactor research facility called HL-2M Tokamak. Given that it operates at a temperature 10 times more than the sun, it has been dubbed China's artificial sun. The artificial sun is China's new generation and most advanced nuclear fusion reactor that was powered for the first time on Friday. China is one of the world's largest economies and is heavily reliant on industries, making it the world's largest contributor to carbon dioxide emissions. To significantly decrease its carbon emissions, the country is relying on this nuclear reactor to produce limitless clean energy. The tokamak operates at 150 million degrees Celsius and uses the nuclear fusion process just as in the sun, and this method is considered the holy grail of energy. The sun produces energy using hydrogen and deuterium gases as fuels through the fusion process. In nuclear fusion, atomic nuclei are merged or fused to create massive amounts of energy. The larger the vessel, the more is the potential to produce fusion energy. People's Daily calls the development of nuclear fusion energy a means to meet the country's energy needs. People's Daily also wrote that it had great significance for the future sustainable development of China's energy and national economy. China plans to build an experimental reactor as early as 2021, build an industrial prototype by 2035, and begin large-scale commercial use by 2050. Nuclear fusion is preferred to nuclear fission, in which atoms are split into 2 or more smaller nuclei. The benefit of using fusion is it does not create radioactive waste. The ITER being built in southern France is designed also to operate at up to 150 million degrees Celsius. China, the European Union, India, Japan, Korea, Russia, and the United States have combined resources to produce the boundless energy that fuels the sun and the stars as members of the ITER.
So what are the signs of the end of the world? Did they happen already? How does this tie into giants breeding with human beings, child sacrifice, and the repopulation of the earth? Cataclysmic floods and great destruction seem to be associated with the fallen angels. According to the Bible, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of Yahuwah came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them in Genesis 6:4, and took from the cattle of the earth and the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with another. And so this is the reason why the Creator Yahuwah had to destroy the earth. The great flood destroyed all of their creations, leaving Noah and his 3 sons with their wives. And of course, after that arose the Babylonian culture. We have this book on Augia. We know that King Og of Bashan was one of the last remaining giants. There are myths that he grabbed onto the ship or came up as dead things do from the sea, according to Job. And so they're associated, Og and the giants are associated with this chronological book of Irish events. And here is where they sought to reproduce their kind again in the Middle Earth, in the Azores, or along in the area of Britain, or Shinar, which could also be known as Atlantis, or the Azores, right, near the West Indies. Those are the lands they occupied and took over, and where they built the Tower of Babel and tried to go against Yahuwah, the Creator. And the region of Ireland is also where the Fomorian giants bred. So watch all my videos on the Og and white giants, and also the white Canaanites and Egyptians go into all of this. And so at this time they had to find out or come up with spiritual deities who would help them with reproduction and recreation. And so Isis was, at the time of Nimrod and even into the time of the Egyptians, was the many-breasted goddess, the ancient Egyptian goddess of marriage, fertility, motherhood, magic, and medicine. She was also the companion of the god Osiris and mother of their child Horus. And Isis absorbed the attributes of most of the other goddesses and gods and became the supreme deity, famous for her curing and redemptive powers. And she was the sister and wife of Osiris, and after his death she became the protector of the dead, and Horus is dead. So Osiris is killed by Seth, his enemy, and I guess this is supposed to be around the time of Babel. Now, Babel and Egypt are conflated because they are the same thing. They are confused with one another because they're actually the same thing. So the Tower of Babel is built, and Nimrod is killed, and Nimrod is a type of Osiris, and he's dismembered, and so she gets herself pregnant again, and through some sort of fertility ritual, multiple children are sacrificed, and eggs are dipped in blood in order for Tammuz to be born, and he is born at Christmas. So this is how child sacrifice and fertility and eggs are all connected to the fallen ones and their offspring. And she also, had a child of incest, not only with her brother, but with her actual son. And so this is related to Easter and Saturnella. So during the time of Israel, before the great 10 plagues, cataclysms that hit Egypt, we have blood sacrifice happening again. Of course, the children are all slain and thrown in the river of the Nile. We already know about that. But in Jasher 76, it talks about the fact that the children of Israel were yet in the land of Egypt, serving the Egyptians in all manner of hard work, and the hand of Egypt continued in severity over the children of Israel in those days. And at that time Yahuwah smote Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he afflicted him with the plague of leprosy, in other words, turning his skin white, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, owing to the cruel treatment of the children of Israel was this plague at the time from Yahuwah upon Pharaoh, king of Egypt. For Yahuwah had hearkened to the prayers of his people, the children of Israel, and their cry reached him on account of their hard work. Still his anger did not turn from them, Pharaoh's, and the hand of Pharaoh was still stretched out against the children of Israel. And Pharaoh hardened his neck before Yahuwah, and he increased his yoke over the children of Israel and embittered their lives with all manner of hard work. And when Yahuwah had inflicted the plague upon Pharaoh, king of Egypt, he asked his wise men and sorcerers to cure him. And his wise men and sorcerers said unto him, that if the blood of little children were put into the wounds, he be healed. And Pharaoh hearkened unto them and sent his ministers to Goshen to the children of Israel to take their little children. So here it is, blood libel, bloodletting, okay, damaging children. And Pharaoh's ministers went and took the infants of the children of Israel from the bosoms of their mothers by force, and they brought them to Pharaoh daily, and a child each day, and the physicians killed them and applied them to the plague. Thus did they all the days. And the number of the children which Pharaoh slew was 375. But Yahuwah hearkened not to the physicians of the king of Egypt, and the plague went on increasing mightily. And Pharaoh was 10 years afflicted with that plague, till the heart of Pharaoh was more hardened against the children of Israel. And at the end of 10 years, Yahuwah continued to afflict Pharaoh with destructive plagues. And Yahuwah smote him with a bad tumor and sickness at the stomach. And that plague turned to a severe boil. So anyway, long story short, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that this ritual, sacrifice and bloodletting of children and killing of children, you see they're doing it right here in Egypt. And they're doing this to the children of Israel even today. So once again, Egypt is not Israel. They're not the same thing. Clearly. It's important to know that when Judah married a Canaanite woman, he had been accused by Yah of lifting up the star of Remphan before these 12 tribes even went into Egypt. So it was a problem that Israel had as well, was worshiping this god, Molech. Now, after the Israelites were captive in Egypt, there was a great destruction as well. In my opinion, there was an end of the world for Israel, but I believe that it was constructed as a new beginning of the world for the children of the enemy. And of course, all of Israel, or any of the true sons and daughters of Noah, have been in a deep sleep all of this time during the rule of this other empire. And so they framed the end of the world as sort of a beginning of their new world, which was the true Christian era to them. However, it was not a true Christian era, after all, because it was based on slavery. Israel had a group of Canaanites that masqueraded as a different nation from a different land, who in the end turned out to be Canaanites. So they had to make them their carriers of water and cutters of wood. But their wealth and their civilization was not based on the Canaanites. And of course, Israel never had a system that was ever based on slavery. And so as we look at this star of wrath poured out, what we find is that ultimately the star of wrath is poured out, according to 2nd Esdras, during the actual end of the world. We're going to look at all of the times. Again, we're going to review when Yah destroyed and what his destruction looks like, and how the fallen angels may have assisted in that to build their new world. The appearance of comets, so amazing to Europe of the Middle Ages, is noted calmly as a matter of scientific interest at Timbuktu. Earthquakes and eclipses excite no great surprise. Is the comet a star of wrath? Remember, Yahusha says to his apostles when they return to him, I saw Satan fall like lightning. This is what Yahusha the Savior says. So all angels have a star, and according to the Apocalypse of Abraham, Uriel leads the stars, and Uriel is Yahusha, the great light. So is there a tie-in with stars, which I'm going to show you are comets? Like I said, there are many ancient accounts of stars of wrath and flying swords. So there's a comet around 1812. There's a comet that appears in the 1600s. When we look at this today, understanding what we do about the firmament, we know that there is water above and below. So when we see this familiar sight, it looks like so many other comets in histories, like a star or a ship, an alien chariot, right? A chariot of the gods, of the angels, skipping along the firmament above. And these comets, like I said, are usually a sign. So, and what is this star always called? It's called Halley's Comet. And where do we get the word Halley from? Well, in the Bible, Lucifer, when we look at the Hebrew, means Halley, Halley's Comet. So is this Lucifer surveying the earth before or after his victories over Israel? Or is this just him surveying the earth that he won and Yahusha has won back spiritually? Before or after catastrophes, this is the sign that seems to be shown. And as I have said, the Mediterranean was created by judgment. And Yah does use Lucifer to judge, okay? And these maps demonstrate at this time that in America there were great cataclysms that created the Great Lakes and the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see that there is a difference in the maps in North America with the Great Lakes. And I've told you many times, the Catholic Church, the Hamitic Church, Catholic Church, is called the Holy Sea, the overspreading flood, the overspreading sea, the marine kingdom of the underworld, which is what Satan signifies. All right? So weren't disasters and flooding how Israel was defeated in great mud floods? There are not a ton of Hebrew Israelite cities in America destroyed and then submerged underwater like this one. We will look into some more of this as we go on, but I wanted to rule this comet out as a star of wrath. For although Lucifer has a star and he is wrathful, it doesn't seem to pour out any kinds of disasters, or does it? The War of 1812, 1 year after the Comet of 1811, 216 days later, the comet was popularly thought to have portended Napoleon's invasion of Russia, even being referred to as Napoleon's Comet. Okay, and there was also a solar eclipse on 1811, and then, of course, the War of 1812 was the war between America and Britain. And there's also some earthquakes that happened. So does the devil pour out wrath? I can't say for sure, but maybe the sun star of wrath will amplify those things. Or maybe this sun star has been used before. Maybe there are many of them around. One thing's for sure, when we look at the old technology in the star forts and the pyramids, they use a lot of the same technology, the deuterium or salt water, or water that mixes with stone to create self-generating energy.
All of these buildings all around here, as I told in class last night, they're ours. They belong to us. They're ancient, these buildings. There's a whole city underneath this city. They went and burned all the major cities, the major energy centers. Our ancestors set up these energy centers that we call Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Atlanta, Detroit, right? Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles. They are energy centers. They're not where they are in huge, large cities just because of some coincidence. There's energy and power in these places. London, Rio de Janeiro.
And so let's take a look at this story of the smoky god, which refers to another sun that exists inside the earth. This is a reading I listened to about 5 years ago on flat water.
The banks and trees on either side seemed to rush by. The ship's speed at times surpassed that of any railroad train on which I have ever ridden, even here in America. It was wonderful. In the meantime, we had lost sight of the sun's rays, but we found a radiance within, emanating from the dull red sun which had already attracted our attention, now giving out a white light, seemingly from a cloud bank far away in front of us. It dispensed a greater light, I should say, than 2 full moons on the clearest night. In 12 hours, this cloud of whiteness would pass out of sight as if eclipsed, and the 12 hours following corresponded with our night. We early learned that these strange people were worshippers of this great cloud of night. It was the smoky god of the inner world.
This makes me wonder if when this star of wrath is set up, if people won't worship it like a god, like this sun is worshipped in this inner earth kind of a world that is described in the book. And so if that isn't a type of Ha-Satan receiving worship. But let's continue with the description of this world, because it may very well be Jerusalem that has been lost to Israel.
The ship was equipped with a mode of illumination which I now presume was electricity, but neither my father nor myself at the time were sufficiently skilled in mechanics to understand whence came the power to operate the ship, or to maintain the soft, beautiful lights that answered the same purpose of our present methods of lighting the streets of our cities, our houses, and our places of business. It must be remembered, the time of which I write was the autumn of 1829, and we of the outside surface of the earth knew nothing then, so to speak, of electricity. The electricity surcharged condition of the air was a constant vitalizer. I never felt better in my life than during the 2 years my father and I sojourned on the inside of the earth. The ship on which we were sailing came to a stop 2 days after we had been taken on board. The city we had reached was called Jehu, signifying a seaport town. The houses were largely and beautifully constructed, and quite uniform in appearance, yet without sameness. The principal occupation of the people appeared to be agriculture. The hillsides were covered with vineyards, while the valleys were devoted to the growing of grain. I never saw such a display of gold. It was everywhere. The door casings were inlaid, and the tables were veneered with sheetings of gold. Domes of the public buildings were of gold. It was used most generously in the finishings of the great temples of music. Vegetation grew in lavish exuberance, and fruit of all kinds possessed the most delicate flavor. Clusters of grapes 4 and 5 feet in length, each grape as large as an orange, and apples larger than a man's head, typified the wonderful growth of all things on the inside of the earth. The great redwood trees of California would be considered mere underbrush compared with the giant forest trees extending for miles and miles in all directions. In many directions along the foothills of the mountains, vast herds of cattle were seen during the last day of our travel on the river. So ordinarily when you're hearing this story, you'd be picturing, and the pictures shown would be of a hollow ball earth. So while you're thinking of this and while you're watching, don't think of it as being in the inside of the ball. Think of it as that you've gone down inside of the earth, inside of caves inside the earth, and that this is where he's finding these things. We were taken overland to the city of Edom, in a conveyance different from anything we have in Europe or America. This vehicle was doubtless some electrical contrivance. It was noiseless and ran on a single iron rail in perfect balance. The trip was made at a very high rate of speed. We were carried up hills and down dales, across valleys and along the side. Surprise of my father and myself was indescribable when, amid the regal magnificence of a spacious hall, we were finally brought before the great high priest, ruler over all the land. He was richly robed and much taller than those about him, and could not have been less than 14 or 15 feet in height. The immense room in which we were received seemed finished in solid slabs of gold, thickly studded with jewels of amazing brilliancy. The city of Edom is located in what seems to be a beautiful valley. Yet, in fact, it is on the loftiest mountain plateau of the inner continent, several thousand feet higher than any portion of the surrounding country. It is the most beautiful place I have ever beheld in all my travels. In this elevated garden all manner of fruits, vines, shrubs, trees, and flowers grow in riotous profusion.
So is this the Eden where the inner earth is concealed and it has its own special sun, the light of Yahusha? Or is this the black sun, the light of the enemy, and a bunch of false worshippers living in his kingdom where he's seated on his throne? And that is the God of fake Christianity and not Yahusha HaMashiach, the true Savior, who is seated at the right hand of Yah. Nonetheless, we see something similar. We see some kind of object emitting light that looks like stars and then becomes a greater, larger light that energizes the entire city or land. So could this be one of the models of a black sun, like the sun that the Chinese are creating? And could this ultimately become a weapon of wrath? Well, let's look at some more of the times when wrath was poured out on the lands. And eventually, trust me, we are going to get to Balenciaga and the pedophilia and the giants and connect to all of this. But let's keep it moving. So once again, I was looking at all of these mud floods and disasters and the inheritors that came out of the ruin of these great nations. And as I've said before in other videos, the dead things that come up from out of the sea and the inhabitants thereof. And I began to look at and consider the fact that in Scripture there's, as we've gone over, and I'll go over them here, there are multiple judgments. What is now the Mediterranean Sea was once all land. But that was the gates of Gibor or Gibraltar or the pillars of Hercules. And this is referred to in Illustrations of America, illustrated by John Ogilvie. And it is also referred to in Jubilees, according to John Ogilvie, the mountains Calfe and Abel, now known as the gates of Gibraltar, the jaws of Gibraltar, were opened by an earthquake, receiving then also an inundation from the Atlantic, which now makes the Mediterranean Sea, being before all continued land. Some double this again, making 4 divisions of this our first part of the world: Europe, Asia, Aphaia, and Egypt. Others later have more reduced them to 3, joining Egypt to Asia, and the other lands being Aphaia or Africa and Europe. North, south, and east were all connected. North America was connected to Africa, so-called Africa, and North America was connected to so-called Eastern Europe, and it was all a circle around the center of the earth, and there was a head who ruled. These are also the accounts of the many uproars, really by Yah, or wars that destroyed the earth and drove the continents apart. There were also just many wars and then judgments after the fall of Israel. It says there will be great earthquakes. The earth was judged over here in North America, and I think that contributed to the mud floods and disasters all over the world because of the fall of Israel and Yah's judgment against Israel. A lot of Egypt was destroyed. When we consider all of these things, and we consider the history of Israel and the end of the world, I want to look at it in terms of disasters on earth would have first of all been caused by Yah. And there's also theories that there were wars with angels, with fallen angels, and wars with the nations who came against Israel. The nations who banded together with this fascia weapon, which is, with the power of the gun. And you see it depicted in many images. And really what it is it's the nations that were confederate and banded together against Israel to defeat Israel and cause the world to forget who they were. And so let's get into some of these theories. Titus recounts the destruction of Jerusalem, and as part of that account, and you can check it out in some of my other videos, there is the statement made, Ichabod, which means the glory of Yah has departed from Israel. So that was the first major destruction after the fall, or during the fall of the temple. But it actually started right before the Babylonian conquest of the first temple. Ezekiel 10:2. Yahuwah tells the man clothed in linen, who is Yahusha, to fill his hand with coals of fire from between the cherubim of his actual throne that comes down into the temple. And he tells him to scatter them over the city. And this is after he shows Ezekiel the men of Israel praying to the sun, moon, and stars and worshiping them. And women crying for Tamu, Esau's Christ or Christ. Matthew 24, Yahusha says unto them, see ye not all these things? Amen, I say to you, there shall not be here one stone left upon another that shall not be thrown down, as he sat upon the mount of Olives. The apostles came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? So what shall be the sign of the end of the era, or the eons? Because they're talking about an eon, okay, which is an age or an era. So this is the end of the era of Israel, their world, which is different from the world of all the Gentiles. And so this is called an eon, all right? And the sign here is written as an oath, off, or picture of the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end of things, an end sign or a mark. So they ask him, what is going to be this sign? And so Yasharel's awakening and their deliverance back to their land will be the great sign at the end, and that is of the return of the Aleph, the He, and the Tav. So this is oath, or a covenant being upheld. He's also talking about the end of Israel. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that the desolation is near. So that's the spreading flood. And let those who are in Judea flee to the mountain, and those who are in the midst of her depart, and let those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant, and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon these people. So Yah is out for vengeance against his people, and so this is how you know who his people are. Hear the word of Yahuwah, ye children of Israel, for Yahuwah hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of Elohim in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and whoring after other gods, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall be cut off. Our will unto Yehuda, swirling and sweeping over it, reaching up to its neck, its spreading streams shall cover your entire land. Are they not ashamed of the abomination they have committed? No. They have no shame at all. They do not even know how to blush, so that they will fall among the fallen when I punish them, and they will collapse, saith Yahuwah. This is what Yahuwah says. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient path. Where is the good way? Then walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls, diaspora. But they said, we will not walk in it. I appointed watchmen over you, priests and prophets, and said, listen for the sound of the ram's horn. But they answered, we will not listen. Yasharel, the African diaspora, judged, because you killed the prophets of Levi and Judah. And so Yah's hand is against you, and his word runs swiftly. Watch the real world wars of the African diaspora, Yasharel, how they were overtaken. See how the overwhelming flood overtook Israel. The hand of Yah coming against Israel, in addition to all of these natural disasters, was a big part of what caused these mud floods. So here's the Babylonian captivity, and Israel went into captivity after the fall of the temple the first time for 70 years. And then as that captivity was finished, Daniel was told by the angel of Yahuwah that 70 weeks would be determined upon the people and upon the holy city for one, sin to be ended, to seal up their transgressions, to blot out their iniquities, to make atonement for iniquities, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophet, and to anoint the most holy. So basically, they had 70 weeks to get it together and enter into the kingdom of heaven. And then what happens is that Yahusha comes in that 69th to 70th week. So he came in the 70th week. And it says he would be destroyed, and there would be no judgment in him, and he would destroy the city and the sanctuary with the prince that is to come. And they shall be cut off with a flood to the end of the war, which is rapidly completed, and he shall appoint the city to desolations. In other words, Israel would not be able to complete these things. And so then the city would be appointed to desolations, an overspreading, overwhelming flood. And so this is what happened after the fall of the temple in 70 AD. And so what Yahusha says, there will be great earthquakes in diverse places, famines and pestilences and fearful sights and great signs, and there shall be from heaven. So this happened before. Israel will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and they and their land will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And the times of the Gentiles are being fulfilled right now. They're ending. So Yah talks about sending judgment and wrath upon his people. And one of the first kingdoms to get hit, of course, is the northern kingdom, just before the Assyrian captivity. And that would be Britain. And so I want you to consider, as we look at some of these pieces of the earth, these remnants of destruction, I want you to imagine that they were once kingdoms and places blown apart. So here's an example of destruction in the northern kingdom. I'm going to have to look at my videos on the lands of Shem, Ham, Japheth, in particular this Wandering Where the Lions Are one, about the northern kingdom, to understand where the northern kingdom is according to the book of Jubilee. British Isles were separated from the continent, and it says here in the footnotes, accounts are given by our ancient analysts of the Great Lakes in various parts of Ireland having suddenly burst forth in remote times in Ulster 1,000 years before the Christian era. It is said that those lakes were to burst forth, overflowed, and the adjoining plain drowned in its waves. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? Why was thy wrath against the sea without his right upon the horses and thy chariots of salvations? Thy bow was made quite naked, according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word. Thou hast cleaved earth with rivers. The mountains trembled, the overflowing of the water passed by the deep, uttered his voice, lifted up his hands on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows they went, and at the shining of the glittering sword. March through the land in indignation. Thou hast thrust the heathen in anger. More prophecies and fulfillments of disaster. Psalm 97. A fire goeth forth before Yahuwah, and burneth up his enemies round about. His lightning enlightened the world. The earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of Yahuwah, at the presence of the whole earth. See how melted and deformed these rocks look? This is this city in Spain that melted and is basically under a rock that melted over top of it from the heat. So This is, I believe, the power of Yah upon these nations in judgment upon Israel. La Sagrada Familia Church, a seeming monument to the horrors of those who perished in Europe and the Spanish Inquisition. Empires built on the dry bones of the Moors, as prophesied in Ezekiel. The church pictures a king crowned in thorny bones or death as he cries out at the carnage beneath him. The Sagrada Family Church translates to the Sacred Family Church, a monument to the Spanish Inquisition. It is said they wanted 18 spires originally. A contrast to a former empire that once named a city Seville. It's as though Gaudi's architecture prophesies a twisted empire, where it appears there is no plumb line and nothing is flush or true. It's a world where death and the thorny spine of the dragon, the pointed head of a horned devil, rules and reigns. A procession of sad-faced kings mock or cry out in horror, wearing dunce caps in the warped realm of Edom, who is the end of the world. So I want you to consider this twisted architecture and what it is a monument to. This is Petra. This is the land of Esau, Edom, that was destroyed by Yah. I mean, don't these empires look like melted rock? Of Edom, it says in Judges 5, when thou wentst out of Seir, and thou marched out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled, and the heavens dropped. The clouds also dropped water. See how melted and deformed these rocks look? And remember, I read to you from the disasters in the north as well. Or in Genesis, Yahuwah rained down sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah out of the heavens, and he destroyed the cities and plain, including all of the inhabitants, so that nothing grew on the ground. And even when he descended on Mount Sinai, it was altogether a smoke and a furnace. Now this melted magma stone mountain was actually captured by 4,000 free black Haitian soldiers when they secured Savannah, Georgia. Why did it melt? Did it melt when the Gentiles stole it from them? So what are all these melted ancient cities that have been destroyed all over the world? Ancient cities that have been judged. This is in Assyria. And we already looked at Petra also. Again, why am I showing you all of this? So that you can understand the wrath that is coming upon the earth and the great fear that the fallen angels and their offspring have of Yah. One of the things Yahuwah says is that Israel was taken away captive to Greece and Rome, and that's actually in North America, and of course part of it is in Russia as well. And so that's why the judgment also happened to Israel here in North America as they were captive here. Because you have taken away my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children also of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far off from their border. You understand that that's when they removed the 10 tribes and the southern kingdom off to America, which is the true Greece and Egypt both. Why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you this so that you can understand the circumstances under which the Israelites were held captive and the culture of the Greeks and their spiritual practices around all of these topics of child trafficking, fallen angel giants and false gods and all this stuff. The Temple of Diana at Ephesus during the time of the Romans, or Artemis in Greece, was one of the largest temples in both times. Why? Because of prostitution was part of the temple worship. So Diana in the Roman religion is goddess of wild animals. The hunt identified with the Greek goddess Artemis, and her name is akin to the Latin words diem, or sky god. Like her Greek counterpart, she's also goddess of domestic animals. In Greek mythology, Diana was called Artemis. She's also associated with fertility and nature. And so why is this important? Well, another one of her forms is the Statue of Liberty, or Ishtar. Okay, and the thing about Ishtar is that this is the harlot god, as I said, the harlot goddess. And so she's associated with prostitution. And Babylonia was a city of prostitution. We see also another name for her was Leto, and she's the god who is the protector of the orphans. And then as Diana, she's the many-breasted god, so she brings in, or goddess, she brings in many children, okay? And basically, it's through her trafficking of children and prostitution that she is able to feed the pedophilia and the fallen angels in the culture of the Greeks and the Egyptians. And so very typically, harlots were social outcasts. And so she was often, as Liberty, referred to the mother of exiles. And so this is why the Statue of Liberty was associated with her, the mother of immigrants, the mother of aliens, alien nation, okay? So she is the goddess of love and fertility and mother of harlots. So we're going to see her that way when we start looking more so at Americas as it is in the present time. But her Latin name is Liberty or Libertas. And the way that she was used, or people misused women and children through her worship in Greece and Rome, was that prostitutes would have to worship her at the temple. And it was actually something that most women would just have to do as part of their religion. They would have to worship at the temple by copulating with other people. And if you were so unfortunate as to have a baby, you could have that baby and the baby would be sacrificed to Moloch in a fire beneath the temple that was always burning for the god Moloch, for those gods. Or you could leave your baby on the steps of the temple, and the temple would take that baby in and make it into a prostitute, or a prostitute for pedophiles, or sacrifice it, or whatever. This is the kind of thing they were doing in Greece, and that Israel had to endure under the Greek captivity. The Greeks were Canaanites originally, and they were descended from the Homo capensis. In other words, they had these sort of odd-shaped heads, and they're associated with Freemasonry, Rosicrucian, all this regular stuff that everybody knows now. And of course, they're part of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha German line, which is related to Queen Elizabeth. And once again, they're Canaanite from the time of antiquity with an O-negative blood type. And these, obviously, they worship dark forces, etc. So that is who the Greeks were, and they took over the identity of the Gentiles and very much bred in with them. And then, as the Canaanites usually do, they take over an identity. And so I'm just mentioning this because we're going to tie this all back into what is going on with Balenciaga today, but we're going to continue this history of this kind of conduct throughout time in the world, so we can understand where we are today and how all of these seemingly disparate elements are going to tie together. But let's get back to cataclysms and destructions in other eras, as well as child trafficking and sacrifice. Once again, you've got to understand that according to the Book of Jubilees, which was originally in the scripture, and there are over 10 versions, copies of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, samples from it, and of course the Ethiopians have had it. It is the Great Book of Times. It's a very valid book. This is what we base our world geography on. And so the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth are not what we've been led to understand. So it's important that you go back and watch There's probably about 7 videos, 6 or 7 videos on the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Please check them out. So here's more biblical records of destruction. Joshua 10:10 say, and Yahuwah discomfited them before Israel, slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Beth Horon, and smote Azekah unto Mechkedah. And it came to pass, they fled before Israel, and were in the going down to Beth Horon, that Yahuwah cast great stones down from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. And they were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. At this time, it says that the Gentiles were dismayed at the signs in the heavens, which is in Scripture, but the Shemitic people were not. And I believe this is because dead things were coming up from the netherworld and living above ground where they had never seen these kinds of things. Basically, I'm trying to show you all of these instances of wrath, to show you what Yah's wrath looked like, and also to show you that there was a massive destruction all over the earth that preceded this current empire. And so I just want you to track with this, continue to track with me, follow me. I'm getting to my point about how this fits into all these other things that are happening right now. But I want you to recognize that we are at the end of the world, and that all of that was witnessing the end of Israel's world and how it affected the whole planet globally. And it came through Esau, Edom, which in 2nd Esdras it says Esau is the end of the world. So let's get a little bit of a picture of Esau, Edom at this time as the actual dragon, Satan, the instrument that is used to end the world of the Hebrews from the fall of the temple, or the first actually Babylonian fall, all the way until now. Now, it's in these times that we begin to see this image of Orphanages appearing. We see this image of this little baby or child with this giant who is carrying the child over the waters, over the ocean, and has this odd relationship with the little child who is the symbol of life and blood. All right, and so these are popular images all around this times. And so I'm just trying to tie back in a little bit to the trafficking and mistreatment and transatlantic slave trading of children at this time, okay, during all of this chaos. It is well documented in the New Testament. Herod and the Romans were well known to have slaughtered the Israelite children, and it probably wasn't just killing them. It sounds like the same traditions. No coincidence that when Yahusha came along, he had to cast demons out of many, many people. And so there was an issue with worshiping other gods and demon possession and glossolalia and speaking in tongues. And children are mentioned in particular. In one particular case, a man comes to Yahusha and asks him to cast a demon out of his son, who continually throws him into the fire. And so when you combine all of this mind control and abuse and fallen angel god worship, you're going to get a lot of demonic activity. Alexander the Great, Lucius Septimus Severus, who came from North Africa, in relation to Esau. And it says in Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains upon which the woman sits, and the dragon described isn't just a nation of people, but specifically the nation of Edom, Esau, that will claim ruling power over parts of the world stemming from the European countries. And this is he who drew a third part of the stars of heaven and cast them down to the earth. Watch all my other videos. I talk about how in the book of Esther, everyone, including Haman, descendant of Esau, started calling themselves Jews. Once again, 2nd Esdras says at this particular time that this star of wrath will be poured out, and that great and mighty clouds shall be puffed up and full of wrath, and the star, and that they will make all the earth afraid, and them that dwell therein, and they shall pour out on every high and eminent place a horrible star, fire, hail, flying swords, and and many waters, and all the fields shall be full, and all the rivers with the abundance of great waters, and they shall go steadfastly unto Babylon and make her afraid, and they shall come to her and besiege her, and the star and all wrath they shall pour upon her, and then shall dust and smoke go up to heaven. All they that be about her shall bewail her. So did that already happen once? And is it going to happen again? Did Esau, Edom, take on the form of the dragon and the fiery sword to defeat Israel? Is that the star of wrath? These lands in America, saying Septimus Severus, the 7 stars, and we've seen these images of this dragon with 7 heads, which is the beast with 7 nations. This is the beginning of his rulership. Check out my Esau's Christ video for more details on the subject. And so this beast with the 7 heads took captive the 10 tribes of Israel, and this is when they made their covenant with death. So during the Maccabees, he rules, and of course in Rome, he rules, and he takes over all of Europe, and then he begins to, even after the scattering of Israel, after the fall of the temple, he begins to invade into northern Europe, where now the southern tribe had scattered. And so he heads into that area and works against Israel through the Spanish Inquisition and Arab invasions. Take heed, you be not deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and the time draws near, but go ye not after them. But then you shall hear of wars and commotions, but be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. And he said unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, famines and pestilences, and fearful signs, and great signs shall there be from heaven. But before all these things, so this is the key thing, they shall lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and to prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And so this is why it is said, Yahuwah hath confirmed his words which he spoke against us, and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil, for under the whole of heaven hath not been done, as has been done upon Jerusalem. Now Jerusalem is not just the land, it's the people. And so that's Daniel 12:12. So the Inquisition and the banishing of the true Israelites from Europe and Spain and the UK begins with the Medicis and Charles, the Holy Roman Emperor, featured here. And then we go to his offspring, Prince Philip, and so on, who continue this. And these are images of them in the Americas, featured as kings there, as contrasted with the Hebrew Israelite kings, who are also there as captives or as people fleeing and seeking refuge in the old world. And so we clearly see who Esau, Edom is and who the Israelites are in these images, as well as the existing Egyptians who are still there. They're all black. There were multiple incursions. Jews were removed from Russia in the 1890s, but in Hamburg 1730. So you see this connection with Russian wars. Spain 1462, England 1422, France 1403, Italy 1342. And of course we have the history of the Inquisition, where 400 to 800,000 people were removed from Spain. Watch my Negro to Bianco series. This is Israel, and Israel mixing in with the Gentiles and the fall of Israel. And this is actually an image of King Charles VIII and the wars. This is the fall of Jacob by the overwhelming flood, and this is Esau overcoming him. During the Spanish Inquisition, we see a definite tie to the KKK, which remains in Spain even today and in America, including extending onto the police force and the prison system. And so we also see the art of the Keurig group, the ring of elites, also reflecting this when we look at the Chapman brothers' art. We see in this art these same themes again. We see human trafficking, pedophilia, links back to the KKK. And so at the time of, up until the time of the Spanish Inquisition, as the Greeks are taking over, they're keeping up their same ritualistic behavior and their white supremacy within the slave trade. And again, is their message, the message of the Chapman Brothers art, a warning, or like most agreements that the fallen put out for human beings or people, is this an open display of what they're about to do to you? So you can agree or disagree with the contract they are about to ensnare you with. Even among elite white women during the transatlantic slave trade that began with the Spanish Inquisition, we continue to see the cannibalistic and violent bloodlust in the women like the White Witch of Rose Hall and Delphi, Madame Delphi, who were known for murdering children and torturing slaves and cannibalism. When we look at the paintings like this from around these times, even from before, just before the Spanish Inquisition, we see a lot of whitewashing, and we see both blacks and whites. So, you know, this is, again, we have Black Edom, and we have him mixing with the white Canaanites and doing all these abominable practices that align him with satanic ritual abuse of children, which is still going on today, even today in London. And of course, I'm showing you this painting and these images so that you can see, again, the pattern that links back to what we're seeing with Balenciaga and the Curry Group and all of the stuff with the Chapman Brothers going on today. And so a lot of this is a callback to 1255, when a young boy named Hugh, the son of a widow, Beatrice, in the city of Lincoln, fell into a cesspool attached to the house of members of a Shemitic community. Now, I'm going to say that because we don't know if this was the Canaanites and Black Edom, the case that we don't know. Likely it was a mix of them, including corrupt Hebrews, but we know who predominantly it was, right? So there, this child's body putrefies for several days, and I don't want to go too much into it, but basically what they're practicing is blood libel. Again, it's human sacrifice and torture of children. Okay, and so this is a reason in 1255, 13th century, on October 4th, that 91 Jews were imprisoned and executed for the martyrdom of Hugh, and the Jews were removed. Okay, so we don't know if this is Black Hebrew Israelites, probably very likely removed from their own lands at this time and taken over to the west. Okay, and a lot of the people in the town were hung on the gallows. And so once again, when you look at these images, you're going to see a mix of people and some whitewashing. All right, so again, same behavior. There's only one particular people, these negative blood drinkers, who need to perform these kinds of sacrifices to survive. Okay, and you know, it's really important that I talk to you guys about the fact that there are a specific set of people who are going to be judged for this kind of conduct. In chapter 10 in the book of Enoch, it says, this place, and this is talking about what the northern sides of the earth. So, you know, we're in the northwest, right? This place, O Enoch, has prepared for those who dishonor Yahuwah, who sit on earth, practice sin against nature, which is child corruption after the sodomitic fashion, magic making, enchantments, and devilish witchcrafts, and who boast of their wicked deeds, stealing, lies, calamities, envy, rancor, fornication, murder, and who accursed steal the souls of men. What? The life is in the blood, the life is in the soul. Who, seeing the poor, take away their goods and themselves wax rich, injuring them for other men's goods, who, being able to satisfy the empty, made the hungering to die, being able to clothe, stripped the naked, and who knew not their Creator and bowed to the soulless and lifeless gods who cannot see nor hear, vain gods who also built hewn images and bow down to unclean handiwork. For all these is prepared this place among these for eternal inheritance. So it's the place of condemnation in the north, the fiery, dark place of death. And of course, the witchcrafts they're dealing in are again relating to these fallen angels and their offspring, the giants. In Enoch chapter 15, it talks about the fact that, you know, the angels were made for heaven and they came down to earth, and we already said they mixed with women. And what Yah said was that I didn't make wise for you, because you being spiritual, your dwelling place is in heaven. Now the giants who have been born of the spirit and the flesh shall be called upon the earth evil spirits. Evil spirits. Okay, so that's what they have after they die. And on earth shall be their habitation. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above. From the holy watchers was their beginning and primary foundation. Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth, and the spirits of the wicked shall they be called. And so this is how they do this blood libel. This is what this, you know, the offspring of the fallen do, because this is not their place of habitation. The habitation of spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits who are born on earth. The spirits of the giants shall be like clouds, which oppress and corrupt, fall, contend, and bruise upon the earth. That's what a ghost is. When you see a ghost, that is a cloud-like spirit. And so if you see a ghost who's claiming to be your family member, or you see a ghost that is your family member, the first one could be a lie deceiving you. The second one could mean that you're a descendant of fallen angels. And so your ancestor is wandering about on the earth because they were not created here on earth and in heaven, but only here, which oppress and corrupt, fall, contend, and bruise upon the earth. They shall cause lamentation. No food shall they eat, and they shall be thirsty, and they shall be concealed, and shall not rise up against the sons of men and against women, for they come forth during the days of slaughter and destruction. So their spirits can't fully access everybody, but what I think is going to happen once this CERN opens things up, and possibly this star of wrath, then this will enable their spirits to activate or come into the bodies of various children and people on the earth, or they'll actually be able to break through various barriers, or they'll be able to be created and given monster bodies. And so what Yah says is, as to the death of the giants, wherever their spirits depart from their body, let their flesh, which is perishable, be without judgment. And they shall perish until the day of the great consummation of the world. So basically, they don't go into hell, down below for judgment to be held in the earth, or up into heaven to the breast of Yah. They are just doomed to wander around the earth. And they have these hungry spirits. And when they live in human bodies, these O-negative type bodies, they don't have a spirit that belongs in heaven. So they can't relate to heavenly or spiritual things. And so they're always thirsting and hungering, but never fulfilled. So what could potentially be another kind of star of wrath that was poured out on Israel? I keep showing this drawing because it's so funny. It does show the star of wrath, but it's interesting how they made all the people look Chinese, even though they're black. They Chinese washed them. Kind of funny. But anyway, so let's look at another potential star of wrath, or weaponry, machine of war and destruction that might have been poured out in the past to masquerade as a star of wrath. You're going to notice is that they were using zeppelins and bombs to destroy Israel. They used them in the civil wars in America. They used them in the Crimean Wars. Watch my video on that. They used them Napoleon used them in North Africa. And so that's what they used as a weapon during the times of these wars between the fallen and Gentiles versus Israel. So you're going to see that this caused a lot of destruction beyond some of the natural disasters, but it was really covered up by these fictitious fires. And so, of course, they did that to hide the fact of these Hebrew world wars. But I just want to picture this as a kind of a star of wrath, a type of the final one to come. There should be several fires, well, a lot of them that should pique your interest. The Chicago fire burned Chicago from October 8th to 10th in 1871 and killed approximately 300 people, destroying 3.3 miles of city and over 1,700 structures, and left more than 100,000 residents homeless. This is brick burning. How does brick burn? It seems that Chicago was just a doomed city. Why are all these people surrounding this building and watching brick burn? And there's the Great Montreal Fire of 1852. And it began on July 8th and left as many as 10,000 people homeless and destroyed almost half of the city's housing. The fire occurred at a time when the city's recently constructed reservoir, located at the site of today's St. Joseph Square, was drained and closed for repairs. The first fire broke out in a tavern on St. Lawrence Boulevard and spread quickly and fanned by strong winds and a hot, dry summer weather. The fire started at St. Lawrence from a wooden house, which was typical at the time. There was a lot of fires in wooden houses around brick buildings, and it spread from the block from St. Denis. And of course, Marie Joseph Angelique, a Portuguese black slave woman, was tried and convicted of setting the fire of her owner's home. And that was in most of what is called Old Montreal. Now we're going to find that some of the settlers of Georgia, one in particular, was a Black British French settler, but these people were the original settlers of these lands, as I've said before. Now, also in Australia, there were bushfires, many bushfires in Australia, and people fleeing. However, the first Europeans arrived in 1788 in Sydney. And somehow there's a connection between them and these fires. And of course, if we start looking at wars, we are going to find that in the War of 1812, there was a huge fire in 1814, the burning of the White House. And they talk about how it was British loyalists, but we can be pretty sure, especially from this depiction, that it was Black British loyalists who burned down and built that White House. Since the fall of the temple, the African diaspora have been at a world war in Israel, North Africa, Europe, and Jamaica that inspired the Haitian Revolution, the American Wars, the Spanish War, a global world war, wars and conflagrations that brought on the end of the world for Israel and the time for them to fall among the fallen. These many floods and conflagrations provide more clues as to what happened with all these mud floods in the cities in North America and, in fact, all over the world. In Spain, as in many other places in the world, like even Venice, it seems like there was an overwhelming flood that allowed these other nations to inherit. So like I said, these floods are always a sign of judgment and also a sign of the nations. Revelation 17:15 said, "Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute were seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." So it's always the Gentiles. And you see these people, they seem like they're coming up from out of the sea, from under the water, from these mud floods. and see how they're pouring up out of it. All right, they seem to be coming up from beneath in these ancient images. Warning, this imagery and throughout this may be very triggering, so just watch yourself, please. Just listen if you can't watch. But remember, children were the primary people in the transatlantic slave trade, not adults. We have the plantation system where the Israelites are quartered and put under mind control through slave conditioning, through having unspeakable acts performed in front of children and amongst families, and adults are reprogrammed, and you can trust and be quite sure that the children were not fed to alligators as alligator bait, but rather to demons, fallen angels, devils. In the casual killing of a child slave by a white female master, what was written was that the death shall not be accompanied by a charge of felony, and anyone doing it should be acquitted of molestation. So is there any difference today?
And have been involved with mind control techniques for a long time. A lot of what they did with the black people was for purposes of, they were very skillfully using trauma and divide and conquer against the black people when they enslaved them. And I don't have time to go into all the ideas behind what they did to the black people, but just leave you with the idea that the reason that they brought over the black people like they did in the ships, with so many dying, and the way they separated them from their past and everything, it was all utilizing mind-controlled techniques. And for some of you that need to see this, because you wonder if satanic ritual abuse does occur, I got this out of a museum, and it's written it's an oath to Satan that's written in the blood of the person who made the oath. And this is very standard for people within the Illuminati. And this all relates to how the mind control is done, because a lot of you can't separate the rituals, the satanic rituals, from the mind control programming. They dovetail in. But they're also using alien themes in the mind control too. Because healthcare and control of grains and all of these different things that we see being controlled behind the scenes, the way that they are able to control them is with these programmed multiples. And that's why people are saying, well, I can't believe that there's a conspiracy because I don't see it. No, it's being very subtly done behind the scenes. And the name of her book's very appropriate. It's an externalization of the hierarchy. What was done in secret in these secret societies that tie in with the Illuminati, what was done in secret 100, 150 years ago is being externalized into society. And part of the way that they're doing it is through the mind control that's got an alien script to it, and through people that are seeing things and dreams and so forth.
Keep in mind the scripture does say that Yahuwah will pour out his spirit on all flesh in the last days, and your young men will dream dreams, and your old men shall see visions. Okay, so although they have this, they say they have this voice is called technology, this is also a means of undermining visions and dreams that Yah may send to people, but you also have to be very much on guard about it.
You know, one of the ways, see, my father was just naturally smart, but there weren't enough naturally intelligent people for the New World Order types to take advantage of. To get enough geniuses to to really move rapidly forward with what they wanted to accomplish. And they discovered that if they scarred the brainstem, they could create somebody with a photographic memory. And so a lot of your people out there that are geniuses working for the system are mind-controlled slaves that have their brainstem scarred as a child. They've been given a photographic memory, and they've got programming. Now, how do they control these people? Well, they are releasing technology at a rate that they have decided upon, and they release that. If you're a mind-controlled slave, a lot of the ideas that you will get will come as dreams. Okay, Volume 2 book that we have, and the title to it's the Illuminati formula used to create an undetectable total mind-controlled slave. Now, how are they doing this? Well, they're using natural things, natural functions of the brain. Some of you have probably been driving along the road and you've been talking to your wife and just driven automatically. See, the mind can work in two different things. What you're doing is you're hypnotically trancing out on your driving. Maybe some of you have been driving and you went from point A to B and don't even remember driving. You just put yourself into self-hypnosis. There's different altered states that the mind can go into, and they're very familiar with these. The mind also has the ability to disassociate. You know, if you say some people, if they say something that's wrong and then you try to correct them later on, they say, well, no, I didn't say that. Their mind has to disassociate. Or you go on a trip and you remember the good things but forget the bad things. Okay, this is disassociation. The mind has a natural ability. Now let's say that you're a soldier in a war, and this has been going on for thousands of years to soldiers in wars. Let's say your buddy, for instance, has his arm blown off and his guts are blown out, and it's a horrible sight. The mind protects itself, and if you look at it on a timeline, and at this point in time is that trauma, if the trauma is severe enough, what the mind does to protect itself, it builds amnesia walls around that trauma. Well, the Illuminati learned this a long time ago, and so what they do is they compartmentalize the mind. They take a small child and they just traumatize the heck out of it and split the mind and build all these amnesia walls between all these traumas. The worse the trauma, the better, because the better the trauma wall. So the most horrendous traumas you can possibly imagine are the ones that they want to use. When you've splintered the mind up into many pieces of disassociated pieces, then you can go in and pull that piece up to the front of the mind, and you can construct out of that piece of memory whatever you want out of it. And you remember that some people have said that the human mind is like a huge computer, and if you got all the computers of the world together, in some ways your mind would excel. You would be all of the computers in the world. You've got a fantastic computer here. Well, you know how a computer can section off memory. You know when you turn on your computer, if you need to reboot it, it reboots out of memory that you can't get to. In order to make a functioning computer, the big hurdle that they had to jump over was to be able to create memory that you couldn't access. Well, that's what they're doing with the mind. They're splintering up your memory into thousands of little pieces.
Post-Hebrew World Wars between the Israelites and the world, we see a plethora of orphanages and sanitariums for all peoples. Everybody being put and shoved into these places for programming or reprogramming in asylums. And we find the appearance of foundling hospitals showing up later on in the late 1800s to early 1900s, where orphan children are farmed and are sent overseas and all over the first world countries. And this is, when you see these foundling hospitals, you always see Diana and or Artemis and Liberty, or a star Wrath of Wrath, or Isis. Okay, so again, this is overseen by a goddess of sexual freedom and prostitution, these hospitals. Early documents on incubators begin to appear about how to raise up strange children using incubators. And there's all these weird stories also about cabbage patch babies, and babies appearing in cabbage patches and being brought by storks and by two women, okay, two satanic women bringing children like storks. So this is two women in a basket, right, of Babylon. So what does the scripture say about all of these births? But the multiplying brood of the ungodly shall not thrive, nor take deep root from bastard slips, nor lay any fast foundation. So bastard slips means false fathers, fallen angel fathers. They're inseminated seed or their own creations that they're creating scientifically. For though they flourish in branches for a time. So this is also the grafted in who persecute Israel and don't take root in righteousness. For though they flourish in branches, what? The grafted in branches for a time, yet standing not fast, they shall be shaken with the wind. Through the force of the wind, they shall be rooted out. The imperfect branches shall be broken off, their fruit unprofitable, not right to eat. Ye meat for nothing. For children begotten of unlawful beds are a witness of the wickedness of their parents in their trial. You can see here in this article in the Canadian Lancet in 1883 that it discusses the fact that there were giants in the earth in those days, and this is related to baby incubators. So there's a connection between the children of the fallen and the science of the fallen and incubators. And so you can check the Lancet out for that. And so it says, if giant babies are the making of giants, all will admit the importance of a good send-off. So they're being very tongue-in-cheek about it. Now they mention also here, just as essential as it is in raising men and women, it is as in raising any kind of stock. Blood and scientific management are no less potent in one case than in the other. So they need blood sacrifice, right? Says, indeed, it would be a great blessing to mankind were some of the idea acted upon by the raisers of good stock imported into the more important business of raising a superior race of men and women. The working out of the law, the survival of the fittest. And then it says here, but no such luck is in store for the human race. So now this is why they have the incubators. But to return to the subject, Dr. Ternier, a French physician attached to a foundling hospital, and reports surprising results from certain recent experiments. The gentleman is said to have been grieved by the large number of children under his care who perished within the first 6 months of their life. So essentially what happens is that he says if French chickens can be raised by artificial means, why not French babies? So the government basically got reports on this experiment. The average of infants when put into an incubator was 8 months and 3 days, the youngest being 12 hours old and the eldest 11 months. The average weight of the 360 guests was 10 pounds. At the end of 6 months, the average rate was 84 pounds, and all were said to have looked like children 8 years old. In the 6 month by the incubator, as accompanied in 8 years of ordinary life, the infants were not only large but strong and healthy, and most of them walked within a week of leaving their nests. Right? Where we're talking about monstrous women will bring forth monsters, and the results were astonishing and exceeded Dr. Tenier's sanguine expectations. It is now expected that every child's hospital will go into the incubation business, so that we shall probably witness a lively competition in the business of raising giants. What's the prefix to the word incubator? Incubus, demon. So part 2 of Balenciaga and the Star of Wrath. So the last half of this is the big payoff, and we're going to get into so much that you'll find unbelievable in it. So I look forward to seeing you then, either tomorrow or the next day. Baruch. Thank you everyone for your donations and support. It means a lot. And subscribe or simply become a member at IntoAllTruth.net to get updates on videos. Subah Yahuwah Reb Aleph Yasharel. Subah Yahuwah Reb Aleph Yasharel. Return, O Yahuwah, to the countless thousands of Israel.
And let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.